everyone. Welcome to the Safe House, brought to you by the SafeHouse Initiative. I'm Jeff Edwards, co-chair of the SafeHouse Initiative, and your host for today's podcast. Welcome to part 2 of Anatomy of Incident Response with Eder Ribeiro, Director of Incident Response at TransUnion. Our discussion picks up this week with the plan. So let's talk about the plan, and then let's talk about executing the plan. Does that sound like a fair way to kind of try to skin this cat a bit?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Because everything has to start somewhere, right? And if, ideally, when you're talking about a cyber incident, you're not starting from the oh no moment. You are starting from, this may happen to me, therefore I should do something about it now when I have some control over it, right? You control the controllables. It's kind of a life motto for me. If you can't control it, then to a certain extent, you have to learn and let go. But the things you can control, maybe you should exert some level of control depending on what those things are. And when it comes to securing yourself in the digital world, especially as a business, and like I said, my personal opinion is this should be for everyone. It certainly should be at least understanding what your risk is and making a plan. So if something happens that requires you to act, you have right then and there an ability to do so intelligently. For a business, you should absolutely have like a written incident response plan that covers a multitude of things. Like every good plan, it needs to cover what are my risks? So, which then requires the business to think, okay, well, what are my risks? I have some computers, I have some phones, I have people coming in here with their personal devices. So maybe those devices pose a risk. I have some email accounts. I may have, some marketing accounts. You may have other tooling. Again, this can be all industry dependent, right? If you're a manufacturer, you have manufacturing equipment, right? If you're a freight company, you have to worry about the trucks. You have to worry about, other things, inventory management, right? That doesn't apply for everyone. But so you have to think about all these things. What do I do for a living? What are the components of what I do? What are the pillars of what I do? And then when you look at these things, what are digital and what's my dependency on that? So you can then start to analyze and figure out where your risk is. And once you have an idea, at least what could be possibly leveraged against you, then you have to start thinking objectively, which I know is difficult, but you have to start thinking objectively about if this breaks or goes away tomorrow and I have no control over that, and then tomorrow I wake up and I can't email, well, how big of a burden is that on my business, right? And once you start figuring out from a kind of a critical to low, which is how in the cyber world we weight or analyze risk and vulnerability, especially in vulnerability management. It's usually, critical, high, medium, low. So start there. What are your criticals? And then all the way down to what your lows. Make a list. I find that to be incredibly helpful because then you know what you put your resources to, because no one, especially in the SME space, has infinite resources. And when it comes to cybersecurity and protection and privacy protection and things of that sort, and IR preparation, you really start to understand that no business has really infinite resources. Every company at some point is going to say, all right, I can't keep spending more time, money, whatever, into this one thing. So making that severity list is, I think, critical. Once you do that, now you can start to say, all right, I have to apply, my business involves tons of email work. Okay, well, now let me go educate myself on this. How am I doing email? And then how do I go about securing that? And then your plan should follow those strategies. Okay, so, how emails, for example, let's say Office 365, because that tends to be the most common email for businesses, right, through Microsoft. Okay, so I pay XYZ a month or a year for these licenses. What do I do here? What's in my control to secure? And that goes back to controlling the controllables, right? You can't control everything. You can't control how Microsoft secures its servers. That's outside of your control. But where you do have control is on the account management. So you can absolutely control your password. You can absolutely ensure that that's a hyper complex password, 12 plus, 15 plus characters, right? Uppercase, lowercase, special characters, not using more than 2 characters in a row, not using the 2 character types in a row, not just the same exact character. All those things that make your password really complex. Why? Well, because that makes it really hard for someone to guess it. And that's an obvious one. The less obvious ones are that a lot of people don't know that in dark web, and nowadays even outside of the dark web, in the regular everyday web, you can find what's called a brute force attack too. A brute force attack is like launching a ton of traffic or a ton of attempts at something. So it's kind of like when you watch the movies, right? And somebody tries to break into a vault and they plug like a little phone into it or something. You see it guessing, 1,000 passwords a minute type of thing. That's essentially a brute force attack. So there are tons of tools out there for that nowadays, that bad guys, or as we call them in our industry, threat actors, or TAs, the TAs can launch those attacks against your email account, for example. So you need to make sure your password is really strong. If if that email account is a lifeline, or, it's a big artery for your business. And then multi-factor authentication, that secondary method to authenticate in if your password is compromised for whatever reason. There are many ways of doing MFA out there. Some are weaker than others. So then it's figuring out, okay, well, what's my risk appetite here? And when there are some things with cybersecurity that will always be there, as far as for as long as I can, at least for the unforeseeable future, in my opinion. And it's some things that always come into consideration. It's cost versus security versus user experience, because the more secure something is, it usually tends to have a more burdensome user experience. Not always, but sometimes, but quite often. And it tends to cost more money. And those are critical things for a business, right? The least secure system is the one you can just access publicly from the internet, and you don't have to put in a username and a password, and you just get right in, the connection is stable. But that's obviously not a very secure piece of equipment, because if you can do that way, then anyone can. You have to go from there and go into, okay, what is the tightest security going to look like? How much of a burden is that? Not every business might have a risk profile that requires them, if they're applying common sense, to say, we're going to spend all this, we're going to spend half of the money we make every year to secure our digital assets. It's, so you have to, as a business owner, make those decisions, which can be very difficult, especially for SMEs, where you don't have a CISO, you don't have some director of InfoSec, of information security or something like that in-house. You have to rely on usually other businesses, right? Your mom and pop IT shop, or perhaps a managed security service provider, things of that sort. But that's where the IR plan needs to begin. It's with that risk analysis, figuring out, what do I have, what's going to hurt the most if it goes away tomorrow, and then figuring out, having a conversation with people with higher levels of expertise on the subject of what's available to me. And what does that look like if I implement this resource to secure that thing? What is that going to look like? And then you start building it. And those are the mechanic pieces, right? Those are the hard parts of the plan, and by hard, I mean kind of like the mechanics, right? Like those are the more closer to tangible. And then you have to start thinking about, all right, well, now I know what my risks are. I know what tooling, what things I can put in place, what resources, because things aren't always just tools, right? It could be resources. Part of your incident response plan has to cover, who do I call for help, right? Who's my IT guy or my InfoSec guy? Do I have cyber insurance? If so, which I highly recommend, especially for SMEs. If I have insurance, what's the call number? That should be in your plan. What's my deductible? Like all these things about your policy that you should know, because in the heat of the moment, you may forget, but it's going to be important. So your plan should cover all these things in details. The third thing a plan needs are the who's. Who's going to do what? You can't have the plan just be a single point of failure, right? You can't have, the plan has to be something that can be kind of your, like I said, a map that will guide you through an incident. That's where the best plans are going to be. So the better plans are going to say, this person is in charge of calling the insurance. This person is in charge of calling IT. This person is in charge of calling, legal support. This person is in charge of calling XYZ, other resource. And if any of these people are on vacation and unreachable, then these people are the people who are going to do that job. So you should always have a secondary, especially when it comes to the people parts of your IR plan. I cannot tell you how many times we've done, there's this thing in our industry, we call them tabletop exercises.
Yes.
And it's essentially a simulation that can range from multiple, from short to multiple hours, where we guide decision makers at a company through, via simulations, through cyber incidents to see, and the point is to gauge your IR response plan, your incident response plan. So we can test then how well your plan's drafted to respond to certain threats, like say ransomware or an email compromise or something of that sort, or some other type of cyber extortion, and also how well versed your leadership is on that plan. And I can't tell you how many times we go to test a plan and there's one C-level member who's in attendance who actually knows the plan or has any real knowledge of the plan, and no one else not only are not familiar with the plan, they don't even know where the plan is kept physically. So if an incident happened, they don't know where to find the plan. Well, it's not for those of us who didn't grow up in the Google Maps, or the Waze life that we have now, where we had physical, map quest that we were downloading, or a physical atlas book, under the front driver's seat of the car. If you don't have a plan that you can get to, if you can't pull out the map, you're going to find, you're going to find yourself lost real quick.
Yeah, you're shooting in the dark.
Thing applies here. Yeah. Exactly. Right. I'm a pretty good shot, but guess what? At nighttime, the night vision goggles help a heck of a lot, right? So it's just one of those things where it's the same for a business. I see it every day. I see our SMEs, clients coming in, and I hear, well, man, I'm just a CPA. I don't know what to do about this, right? Well, when we have a debrief, when we've done the forensics, we've done the incident response, we helped the client through putting out the fires, and we're in calmer waters, and now we're having a discussion. In the military, we call these AARs, or after action reviews, and we're reviewing the pros, the cons. What did we do well? What did we not do well? I can tell you, there's very few clients of ours that don't have, out of the population that don't have incident response plans, who don't come out of those calls saying, oh, I wish I knew better what to do on day zero than I did, because it would have helped exponentially sometimes their ability to overcome the incident successfully. So, that's the kind of, it's not a like scaring attitude here. I know sometimes that's how it comes off. My goal is not to scare people ever, but awareness can be scary. Unfortunately, that's just how life works. And, or fortunately, it depends how you look at it, really.
Well, ignorance is not bliss.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And people find that out, unfortunately, the hard way. We see things that sometimes the policy, we call them often policyholders, because a lot of the work we do is through insurance, but the end client, we often see the end client think, man, I never thought my email could cause this much trouble. But, take, for example, a real estate broker that we were helping down in Florida about a couple months ago. And this broker happened to hold funds in escrow for projects, which is not an uncommon thing. And he had a client who was building a home down in the Keys and had just pushed, the next payment for the build, hundreds of thousands of dollars. The problem was the broker's email account was compromised, and the threat actor, once he got into his email account, read emails from that client and saw that, oh yeah, this guy's due to make a payment real soon. Found what an invoice or, whatever transactional document the broker tends to use, found it, edited one of those PDFs to make it look so that way it looked just like the broker's, and reached out to the client from the broker's email account. So there was no, this is the hardest phishing type of thing to figure out, right? Because it's not like one of those phishing tests where you see a wrong email address perpetrating to be the person you're talking to. No, it was that person's email. But that's where behavior comes in, right?
Yeah.
If you're dealing with somebody that then out of nowhere is asking for something that's fairly sensitive and it's not something they ever did, do the old school thing. Pick up the phone and call them, right? Don't just assume, oh, okay, this is right because it's coming from their email address. And in this scenario, unfortunately, that person who was building the house fell victim to that. And the threat actor sent them an invoice, said, hey, here's your new invoice. We had to make some changes. They made a believable story out of it. They had some conversation back and forth. And ultimately, that client put that several $100,000 payment into the wrong bank account.
Oh boy.
And it wasn't until 2 weeks later, when the client was not receiving updates from the broker, that he picked up the phone and called the broker. And the broker said, I haven't talked to you in 2 weeks. And they said, what are you talking about? I paid you a week and a half, almost 2 weeks ago, XYZ 100,000, a couple $100,000. Or well, this case was a few $100,000. And the broker said, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no payment from you. I have no email. I've sent you nothing. And the client showed him a screenshot of the email, and he's like, I have no idea, like, this is not real. Brought in called his IT guy, and turns out, yes, then they called into us and we did forensics on the mailbox and figured out, yes, some IP address trace, geolocating back to Eastern European VPN service provider, logged into his account and accessed a bunch of emails, changed some configuration settings in the account, enacted something called a mailbox rule that can sometimes act like a filter to basically any email that came from that client would get marked as read automatically. So it would never trigger a new email message, and it got moved to another folder that was in the inbox automatically. So when that person emailed the broker never saw the email. It just got marked as read automatically and went elsewhere. So now the broker never saw that email traffic. So that's how that transaction happened. But now several $100,000 are gone and unretrievable, because by the time that this whole thing, the oh no moment occurred, it had been too late. All the banking transactions had cleared, and the threat actor had moved their money to 1,000 different locations. By then, it's gone. So now you have the issues that this broker who had been in business for so long was possibly on the hook for 400 plus K to this client. So it can be, you can imagine the stress from that for something as simple as just his email account. And so a lot of folks don't think about, oh my God, my email could be used against me to do something like that. And we see it every day. These business email compromises are happening globally at scale every single day. So, and so that's stuff that we see. And, yet if that broker had an incident response plan, and if that incident response plan covered things like account management and password management and multi-factor authentication and good cybersecurity hygiene pillars, there's a great chance that that event would not have happened.
The awareness and the education are critical, but it sounds like doing the plan itself, the end result is a very valuable tool, the plan, a necessary one, but the process you go through to get there is really a serious, deep thinking about how your business operates, and maybe even discover more efficient ways in which you can operate your business potentially.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't, tell you how many times we've had clients that were going through the IR plan build, and then they figured out, this doesn't seem that efficient. Or they have a conversation with the experts available to them at that time, whether that may be their IT guy or something, right? And especially with small businesses, they're often their support entities are also usually quite often small businesses. So they call their mom and pop IT, from down the road, who works for them on what I like to call the fix it and break it model, right? When things break, they get a call, they come in, they fix it, and they don't come back again until something else breaks. And so it's not managed services. And that IT guy may be like, oh, by the way, did you know of this thing? because you have a good relationship, right? You're spitballing a little bit. You're asking them questions about, hey, what can I do to secure this or whatever? So now you got the creative juices going, and that guy may turn around and say, hey, did you know of this tool that you can use to ease your file transfers? It's a lot safer. Has all these different functionalities. And now maybe you're not exchanging that sensitive information via email anymore. Maybe you're doing it via a portal or something, but you may not have known that because you're spending all your time doing what you do for a living, right? And no one can blame you for that. So yes, absolutely. The IR plan creation can be eye-opening to not only more efficient, not only more safe ways, but also more efficient ways of doing what you already do. That certainly happens.
Yeah, and also to follow on that for the health of your organization is once you have the plan, is exercising the plan. The tabletop exercises will unveil how you should think about, I don't even know where the plan is, that physical aspect of it, and then start to think about how you can divvy it out to where everybody has access to the plan and knows where to go get it, even if they're the newest employee.
For sure. Absolutely. Figuring out, where do I put this thing? Where do I put physical copies of this thing? Where do I put digital copies of this thing? How do I deploy it, right? If we have an incident, is there a way that I can make sure that everyone that needs to know what to do, who's a stakeholder, the stakeholder part of the IR plan cannot be ignored. When we work these for folks, we will seek to create not just secondary, but even tertiary stakeholders. So if the CFO is supposed to do this, what happens if he's unreachable? Or what happens if he's, in a different time zone for work or for personal travel? And we know they might be reachable, but it might be 5 hours. If we need a decision made now, who has that delegation of authority? And that is a big thing to think about as a business, right? Who do you trust within your business to delegate your authority to? And so creating those stakeholders is absolutely huge. And then ensuring that at a bare minimum, those people know exactly what the plan says, what the plan covers, what the intent is, and where the plan is, right? In a perfect world, yes, every employee would have access to the plan, but that's unlikely in all reality to most businesses unless they have some very specific tooling to effectuate that. But at least those key stakeholders, they have to know where that map is, because otherwise, again, you're lost in a world without Google Maps.
Well, let me ask you a question then, Eder. I always ask our guests if, because we always like to operationalize things the best we can to give good advice that can be actioned upon immediately. If you had one thing that our audience could do today, what would you recommend them to do?
One thing is tough. One thing is tough. If you're gonna hold my hand to the fire to one thing, I would say start thinking as objectively as you can about cybersecurity, and remember that cyber is a part of everything you do. It then spiderwebs into a lot of different things, legal and compliance, and contractual obligations, all sorts of things that, cyber is going to have its little spiderweb go and touch. But it starts with just make it a true part of your business thinking for the business client. And that goes for the non-business client too. I can't tell you how many times we've gotten, as we now service a lot of personal lines calls, because people have had their Instagrams compromised, and now the threat actors deleting posts and are maybe making fake posts that are, shedding a very negative light on that person, or, sending direct messages or AKA DMs to family members or friends and whatever, trying to phish them or trying to extort them. All sorts of negative things happen. And this is just everyday people. And I guarantee you right now, if you think you can't be extorted, or that cyber extortion is a business thing only, or it's a ransomware thing only, I tell you right now, it is absolutely not true. We see it all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've seen incidents come in through the door because now the client wants to do some sort of forensics on their computer or something of that sort. But by the time they got to us, there was an entire cyber extortion that happened where they paid $200, $300, $400, $500, $1,000, $1,500 to some threat actor to give them access back to their social media accounts. It happens all the time, and it doesn't get really talked about very often, especially in the news, but it happens all the time that we see this sort of thing happen. And it's a very difficult thing for people to go through. People are very concerned about their reputation, and as they should. And so once you create online profiles and a life online, this sort of crime can apply to you too. And if you think, oh yes, no one's going to come after me, listen, I've seen ransoms that are $150 to let go of somebody's Instagram account or Facebook account. If it's easy to just break your password because you don't have a simple complex password, and you have no MFA in your social media account, then that's a very easy couple $100. So a threat actor can launch that against 5,000 email addresses or Facebook accounts or something. If you get 30% penetration rate, and if half of those people pay you, you're talking thousands of bucks just from a couple $100 payments here, here and there. And that's a very easy way to keep your cash flow if you're a small criminal, group.
Your passion and your kindness towards your fellow citizen is shared by all the players at the SafeHouse Initiative and all of our audiences. So I just want to tell you on behalf of everyone, you're going to help a lot of people with this conversation. And I think we really appreciate your contribution to the SafeHouse. And we wish you all the best and welcome you back anytime to the SafeHouse.
You got it. You want me here, I'll be here. If the folks that are listening, want more of this, I'm happy to come back and have conversations. This was fantastic. Thank you.
And thank you. Have a great day, buddy. That's our podcast for today. I'm Jeff Edwards for the SafeHouse Initiative. Thanks for joining us. And remember, be safe, be resilient, and be kind to each other. For more information about the SafeHouse Initiative, please use your mobile device to scan the QR code on the screen, or send us an email at info@safehouseinitiative.org, or visit us on our website, safehouseinitiative.org. We look forward to hearing from you.